Welcome to the WION podcast, where we explore fascinating stories and ideas from various fields. In this episode, we examine how interstellar comet 3I Atlas, traveling at an unpredictable trajectory, exposes critical gaps in military detection, response, and space security strategies worldwide, raising concerns about global defense readiness and satellite safety that directly affect us all. 3I Atlas travels at roughly 130,000 miles per hour, making it extremely difficult to track. For military space monitoring systems, this high velocity tests the limits of current detection technology and response times. Unlike most near-Earth objects, it does not follow a standard orbital path. Its unusual trajectory forces defense agencies to rethink prediction models for interstellar threats. Current military early warning systems are optimized for asteroids and satellites within the solar system. Its speed and irregular movement could temporarily evade detection, highlighting vulnerabilities in these systems. High-speed objects can collide with satellites, space stations, or military reconnaissance systems. While it poses no immediate threat, its trajectory underscores risks to space-based defense infrastructure. The comet's rapid approach demonstrates the importance of international collaboration. Defense agencies must share real-time data to accurately track high-speed celestial objects and coordinate response measures. It serves as a real-world stress test for military space simulations, from missile defense scenarios to satellite maneuver planning, helping agencies identify gaps in preparedness. Its high-speed trajectory reinforces the need for updated space security strategies. Defense agencies are prompted to develop faster detection algorithms, contingency plans, and interstellar threat protocols. We uncover a controversial decision allowing Holtec International to release 45,000 gallons of treated radioactive water into the Hudson River, a vital drinking source and ecosystem, raising serious public health and environmental concerns. A judge has approved a controversial plan to release 45,000 gallons of radioactive water into the Hudson River. New Jersey-based Holtec International won a lawsuit against New York that had challenged its plans to discharge radioactive substances from its Indian Point nuclear plant, which is no longer functioning. In 2023, the state passed the Save the Hudson Bill, aimed at preventing Holtec from releasing wastewater from its defunct nuclear facility. The Hudson River provides drinking water to more than 100,000 people, and extensive cleanup efforts have been undertaken in the past to make it safe for the residents. Meanwhile, the Indian Point nuclear power plant was permanently shut down in 2021 after nearly 6 decades of operation. It was sold to Holtec International, a company that specializes in dismantling retired nuclear plants and managing spent nuclear fuel. The Save the Hudson Bill was passed unanimously by both chambers of the state legislature and signed into law by Governor Kathy Hochul. Environmental regulations were updated under it, and fines were established for those who violated the laws established to keep the Hudson clean. However, Holtec's attorneys argued that New York overstepped its authority by passing the Save the Hudson Bill. U.S. District Judge Kenneth Karras ruled last week that discharges from the decommissioned nuclear facility can only be regulated by the federal authority. He added that New York's ban on doing so was unconstitutional. Holtec argued that releasing nuclear wastewater into rivers has been a common practice for decades. Further, it stated that 45,000 gallons of radioactive water will be slowly discharged. Meanwhile, experts say that Holtec can handle the water differently. Other options include storing the water in sealed containers at the site instead of releasing it into the Hudson. Holtec told Patch, "Radiological discharge is the sole purview of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and that the treated water is monitored and sampled to ensure that it meets regulatory requirements before it is released and will be a small fraction of the 3 millirem total annual limit imposed by the NRC." Critics say this is not the right solution and that the Save the Hudson law has helped the river recover and allowed bald eagles, sturgeon, and even dolphins to return. Notably, the improved water quality has led to sightings of the bottlenose and short-beaked dolphins in the Hudson. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, we now shift our attention to the South Pacific nation of Fiji. The country of fewer than 1 million people now faces one of the fastest growing HIV crises in the world. With experts warning the worst is yet to come. Over the past decade, Fiji's HIV numbers have skyrocketed. According to UNAIDS report, in 2014, fewer than 500 people were living with the virus. By 2024, that figure skyrocketed to nearly 5,900. That's an 11-fold increase. And just to put that into perspective, last year nearly 1,600 new HIV cases were recorded. That is 13 times higher than the nation's 5-year average. And around 40 of these cases involved children aged 15 or younger, up from just 11 in 2023. These statistics prompted Fiji's Ministry of Health to declare an official HIV outbreak in January. Now officials are warning that more than 3,000 new infections could emerge by the end of 2025. Fiji's Assistant Health Minister called the situation, and I'm quoting here, a national crisis that shows no signs of slowing down. At the core of this epidemic lies a mix of factors, such as rising drug use, unsafe sex, and the dangerous practice known locally as Bluetoothing. In this method, one drug user injects their blood after taking a hit into another person, who might then pass it to a third, and the cycle continues. This process, also called hotspotting, it's been seen before in South Africa and Lesotho, two countries with some of the world's highest HIV rates. And what's leading to this? According to experts in Fiji, syringes, they're difficult to get. Pharmacies often require prescriptions under police pressure, and needle exchange programs are scarce. Hence, sharing one syringe becomes a cheaper, faster alternative. The Fiji Health Ministry recognized Bluetoothing and chemsex, the use of methamphetamine during sexual encounters, as key drivers of this HIV surge. In Fiji, meth is often injected directly into the bloodstream, and the country has reportedly emerged as a major transit hub for crystal meth trafficking, resulting in the substance flooding local communities. According to the country's most recent HIV stats report, injectable drug use accounts for 48% of Fiji's HIV cases. Sexual transmission contributes to around 47% of such cases, and health workers warn that the real numbers may be far higher than what's reported.
Rescue efforts are underway as nearly 1,000 hikers become trapped on the slopes of Mount Everest. In the video, you can see a line of hikers wading through the snow of the world's highest peak. The BBC reports hundreds of local villagers and rescue teams are attempting to clear out snow that blocks access to an area that sits at an altitude of more than 16,000 feet. The snow began falling heavily in Tibet on Friday. Authorities say rescue calls reported collapsed tents due to the snow, with hikers suffering hypothermia. Experts say the region is suffering from extreme weather as neighboring Nepal deals with heavy rains that triggered landslides. About 150,000 Chinese residents were forced from their homes, as well as Typhoon Matmo made landfall.
Iran is battling an unprecedented climate crisis. Its once abundant lakes have now dried and transformed into deserts. 19 of its major dams that once powered the country are now on the verge of drying out completely. In a grim data from Iran's water management body, 3 of the 19 dams have already run out of water. Half a decade of consecutive droughts have severely depleted Iran's water reserves. Reservoir levels have reduced to 35% of what they originally used to be. Dams in Tehran, Khorasan, Kaman, Hormozgan, and Zanjan provinces are among those at critical levels, while the ones at Shamil, Niyan, Golestan have reached to zero storage. However, this crisis is not new to Iran. Early in summer, it turned into an emergency, with the government issuing multiple alerts urging people to cut down on water consumption. State media warned Tehran's 10 million people they could hit day zero, the point at which water resources can no longer meet demand. Mismanagement of resources has now compounded into a chronic crisis with demand outpacing supply. Iran's water bankruptcy has reached a level where ordinary solutions can no longer resolve it. In September, the government looked to impose week-long holidays to cut down on electricity and water consumption. And in an even more desperate bid, Iranian President Pezeshkian was willing to offer 100 billion tomans. That's about $1 million to anyone who could solve the crisis.
Families sleeping on the streets or in informal shelters. This is the reality of Kenya's acute homelessness crisis. In Nairobi, poverty, forced displacement and limited access to affordable housing have left thousands with nowhere to go but the streets. The crisis affects everyone from adults to children. Joyce Mutoni is a mother of 3. Her family ended up homeless after she lost her job. I have been living on the streets for 10 years and there are many challenges in the streets. For instance, it gets very cold at night. Most of the time we are hungry, the kids are crying. As if that is not enough, the police usually beat us at night. And it's not like we do not have a government. The 2018 National Census of Street Families found that more than 46,000 people were living on the streets in Kenya. Poverty remains the main root cause of homelessness. About 40% of Kenyans live below the national poverty line according to the World Bank. Many are forced to live in informal settlement areas. One of them is Kibera in the south of Nairobi.
Hii nyumba naishi ni 2,000 na imetengenezwa kwa udongo.
I pay around 2,000 Kenyan shillings per month in this mud house, which is not even in good condition, and even the roof leaks. The landlord does not care and is very harsh with rent. If he says rent is due on the 5th and you fail to pay on time, he locks the door or even throws out your stuff. You are forced to work hard to pay for the house.
Anafunga mlango na kutupia vitu nje. Sasa inabidi uwork hard ili ulipe hiyo nyumba.
A solution to the crisis is to build more affordable housing. The Kenyan government is constructed over 100,000 homes through its affordable housing program.
To deal with homelessness, I believe it should take a concerted effort of the government authorities to provide housing for the masses. But this could be done through social housing programs, whereby the costs are highly subsidized to enable these people buy into the houses.
According to the World Bank, Kenya has a housing deficit of 2 million homes. President William Ruto last month proposed the creation of a multilateral coalition to fight the global housing crisis.
400 people in Gaza have died of malnutrition since the start of the year, according to the World Health Organization. That figure includes 101 children, of whom 80 were under 5 years old. Rana Abu Zatir is a doctor in northern Gaza. Large numbers of patients are coming to us from the southern Gaza Strip and from the southern areas. In addition to the increase in the number of cases among children under 5 years old, we've started to face new numbers and new cases in those over 5 years old. As a result, we have begun to receive cases of severe malnutrition with medical complications from 5 to 12 years old. We've also recently begun to receive cases from the age of 2 months to 6 months. Currently, there are just 4 malnutrition stabilization centres in Gaza that remain operational. Northern Gaza has also been cut off from food aid for weeks, leaving the nutrition response facing critical shortages of therapeutic foods. There are large numbers of children and adults who have died due to malnutrition and its complications. Unfortunately, in the coming days and even in the coming period, if the crossings remain closed in this way and the prices of basic commodities continue to rise in this way, we will face a real disaster in the Gaza Strip due to malnutrition and the lack of sufficient food resources for a normal life for these people. On Monday, the World Food Programme said humanitarian access was improving, but stressed that a ceasefire is needed to get enough food aid to the most vulnerable.
It is a political déjà vu for France. Another government has fallen. The Prime Minister has resigned, the 5th one to leave in the last 2 years. His name is Sébastien Lecornu. He was appointed just 26 days ago, and now he is already on his way out. So how did France get here, and what happens next? Like I said, Lecornu was appointed just last month. He was President Emmanuel Macron's trusted defense minister. At just 39, he has survived every reshuffle since 2017. Now that's an impressive feat in a government where prime ministers exit faster than fashion trends. But Lecornu had a big task ahead. He had to build consensus in a split parliament. Yesterday, Lecornu appointed his cabinet. It was largely unchanged from the previous prime minister. And that was the trigger. Parties across the board criticized it. They threatened to vote it down, and thus Lecornu had to resign. He blamed partisan appetites for his resignation.
The third point is that forming the government within the common base has not been smooth and has given rise to a revival of certain partisan appetites, sometimes linked, quite legitimately, to the future presidential election. I say it again, even if this moment is the most parliamentary of the Fifth Republic, we must not, under any circumstances, relive the bad times of the Fourth Republic.
This comes just a month after François Bayrou lost a confidence vote. He was prime minister for just 9 months. He tried to push through $38 billion in budget cuts. It included slashing pensions, freezing spending, and squeezing public services, all in the name of reducing debt. The parties did not like that. Bayrou was forced to resign last month, and Lecornu succeeded him. Now, even Lecornu is out. France is without a prime minister again. But why do the French governments keep collapsing? Again, most observers blame one man, French President Emmanuel Macron. Last year, he took a gamble. He called a snap parliamentary election. This was after his party's poor showing in the European vote. The result was a hung parliament. His centrist bloc lost big. Power was fragmented between the far left and the far right. Right now, there are 3 camps in the split French parliament: Macron's centrists, Marine Le Pen's far right, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon's far left. And that has left France essentially ungovernable. So Lecornu's fall was inevitable. And at this rate, the next prime minister won't last much longer. Also, there's the growing economic crisis. France has a public debt of over $3,900 billion. It is equal to 114% of the country's GDP. Its deficit reached 5.8% of its GDP in 2024. The people are frustrated. The poor and middle classes are constantly asked to tighten their belts. Meanwhile, the wealthy remain untouched. There have been multiple protests across the country. So what happens next? Parties are now calling for an early election. Some are calling for Macron to step down. However, the French president has made it clear he will not step down before his term ends in 2027.
I am calling on him to dissolve the National Assembly because we have reached the end of the road, and there is no solution today, nor will there be tomorrow. The joke is over. The farce has gone on long enough. The French are fed up with this situation. And in this case, Emmanuel Macron, by resisting institutions as he does, irrationally, is putting the country in a terribly complicated situation, and his own camp as well.
This frustration is starting to define the Macron era. When Emmanuel Macron swept to power in 2017, he promised a democratic revolution. 8 years later, France is trapped in a political loop. Prime ministers come and go, governments fall and reform, but nothing really changes. Commentators say that Macron's biggest problem isn't his opposition, it's his style. He's governed like a president who prefers control over conversation, and that has consequences. The far right has never been stronger. Marine Le Pen's party is closer than ever to power, and Macron's approval rating has slipped to a record low. It is at just about 15%. So where does France go from here? Some say Macron could try to reinvent himself again. Others think it's too late. His promise of renewal has faded into fatigue. But one thing is clear. The Fifth Republic was built to bring stability. Today, its leaders are falling faster than they can be sworn in. And that may be Macron's biggest test yet. Not just as a president, but as a keeper of the very idea of the French Republic itself.
Meanwhile, in Chicago, sources telling Fox News police there were told to actually stand down on helping ICE agents who are in danger. Mike Tobin has this story for us, all the details. Hi, Mike.
And Dana, we've got a lot of rank-and-file Chicago police officers behind the scenes telling us that they are outraged that the stand-down order went out to them after federal agents were attacked. The order appears to have come through a communication from the chief of patrol over the communication through the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, reading, "No units will respond to this." Multiple police sources have confirmed to us the message is authentic, and it is backed up by audio of the stand-down order.
And again, per the Chief of Patrol, we have all the units that, per 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
In an official statement, CPD says officers did respond, writing, quote, CPD responded to the scene to document the incident. CPD officers were also on the scene to maintain safety and traffic control. Now, chaos was triggered when, according to federal prosecutors, two individuals used their cars to ram the cars of Border Patrol agents. One of the agents shot a driver of one attacking vehicle. Those attackers are now charged federally. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says the facts need to play out.
We don't have a lot of facts. Remember, these are the same folks who killed a person, unarmed person, just a couple of weeks ago in Franklin Park. At first, they said that the officer had been threatened with his life. The reality of it and the truth of it has now come out, and that wasn't the case. They killed somebody. They are just putting out their propaganda, and then we've got to later determine what actually happened.
300 Illinois National Guardsmen have now been called up for a 2-month deployment to Chicago. What you're looking at right now is video of the scene that triggered that particular radio call. Tear gas and pepper balls were deployed into the crowd after agents said they were attacked. But meantime, as I just mentioned, 300 Illinois National Guardsmen have been called up for a 2-month deployment to Chicago to protect federal personnel and property. Also, Texas National Guardsmen, 400 of them, have been called up for deployment to both Illinois, to Portland, and an undetermined location. Back to you, Dana.
All right, Mike.
In the UK, just days after a deadly attack outside a synagogue in Manchester, police are now investigating a suspected arson at a mosque in East Sussex. The incident took place late Saturday night when two masked men tried to break into the mosque. They then poured gasoline over the entrance and a nearby car before setting them on fire. Two worshippers were inside at the time but managed to escape without injury. Police have since released images of the suspects and have increased patrols in the area. Here are more details on the event.
Following the deadly synagogue attack in Manchester on October the 2nd, where two worshippers were killed, Sussex police are now investigating a separate incident at a mosque in Peacehaven, East Sussex. Late on Saturday night, two masked men attempted to break into the mosque before setting fire to the entrance and a car outside. According to a voluntary mosque manager, the suspects arrived shortly before the fire and tried to force the door open. When they failed, they poured petrol on the steps, doorway and a vehicle, then ignited it. CCTV footage shows both men wearing balaclavas. One wore a black jacket with a pre-London logo, while the other had bright red gloves. Police have appealed to the public to help identify the suspects. Officials said the case is being investigated as arson with intent to endanger life, and additional patrols have been deployed at the mosque and other places of worship across Sussex.
This was an appalling and reckless attack, which we know will have left many people feeling less safe. We are treating this as an arson with intent to endanger life, and are continuing to pursue a number of lines of inquiry to identify those responsible.
The Peacehaven Mosque, which opened 4 years ago, typically hosts 10 to 15 worshippers for evening prayers, and it has faced hostility before. In August last year, eggs were thrown at the building on 2 occasions, and racial slurs were shouted at passers-by. The mosque attack comes just days after the Manchester synagogue incident, where 2 worshippers were stabbed and 3 others seriously injured. Police shot dead the attacker, 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, a British citizen of Syrian descent. However, local residents reflected with sorrow on the deadly attack.
Just awful. It's really sad to see the effect it's having on everybody. It's not the country I want to live in. It's somewhere where people are being affected so awfully for just living their life. It's definitely not what anyone wants, and it's really sad to see.
In fact, during a rainy vigil for the victims of this synagogue attack, Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy also faced the protesters' wrath. While addressing the crowd gathered near the synagogue, he said, "We stand in defiance of those terrorists who seek to divide us." And just then, a heckler intervened and shouted, "Shame on you, you're embarrassing."
We stand in defiance of those terrorists who seek to divide us, who want to pit neighbour against neighbour, to weaken the bonds that bind us together as one nation, one people, one united kingdom.
Please, let the Deputy Prime Minister speak, please.
Shame on you! That response honours those we have lost.
You're embarrassing!
May their memory be a blessing, not just...
Clearly, both incidents have prompted widespread condemnation. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood described the Peacehaven mosque fire as deeply concerning and urged unity across the nation. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, commenting on the Manchester attack, warned that hatred was once again on the rise.
That this is a country that stands up to hatred, and that we don't just provide refuge, we provide a home. For so many Jewish families, that is the story of Britain.
Local politicians spoke out as well. Liberal Democrat MP James McCleary called the mosque an important part of his constituency and described the fire as appalling. Chris Ward, Labour MP for Brighton, Kemptown and Peacehaven, called it disgusting. Faith and community leaders echoed these sentiments. Chair of Brighton and Hove Muslim Forum said no community, whether Jewish or Muslim, Christian or Hindu, should face violence at places of worship. Campaign group Brighton and Hove Stand Up for Racism highlighted recent alleged far-right activity in the region, including graffiti, flags and intimidation campaigns. Police confirmed that their investigation is ongoing and urged anyone with information about the suspects to come forward. The mosque now stands damaged, but not destroyed, but its congregation is shaken and clings to hope amid fears.
God bless the United States Navy.
President Donald Trump celebrates the 250th birthday of the Navy in Norfolk, Virginia. The president, First Lady Melania Trump, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth attended military exercises before each addressed hundreds of members of the military.
And at Normandy, the Navy led the greatest armada ever formed to deliver the single largest invasion force the world has ever seen.
Trump thanked many military brass, but one of the only people to get a standing ovation was 100-year-old Felix Maurizio. The World War II veteran was among those who fought in both Normandy and Iwo Jima. Prior to leaving for Norfolk, the president posted on social media, quote, "The United States has the greatest military by far in the world. This will be a show of naval aptitude and strength," end quote. The remarks come as critics question the timing of the celebration as the government continues to be shut down. Among those going without pay, the military. Trump took the chance to announce a pay raise while also taking a jab at Democrats.
Despite the current Democrat-induced shutdown, We will get our service members every last penny. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Do not worry about it. It's all coming. It's coming. And even more because I'm supporting the across-the-board pay raises for every sailor and service member of the United States Armed Forces. But we have to take care of this little gnat that's on our shoulder called the Democrats. They want to give all of our money to illegal aliens that pour into the country.
Senate Democrats rejected the budget, which would have started last Wednesday. Health insurance costs and Medicaid are among the sticking points. The Republican plan has passed the House, yet failed to reach the 60 votes needed in the Senate to move forward.
And tensions between NATO and Russia are rising once again, this time along the northern edge of Europe. NATO has officially opened a new command center in Finland, just a short distance from Russia's border, prompting Moscow to ramp up its own military presence nearby. NATO's command center is located in the Finnish city of Mikkeli, roughly 300 kilometers from St. Petersburg and about 140 kilometers from the Russian border. According to the Finnish Defense Ministry, this new center will oversee NATO ground operations in Northern Europe, manage joint military exercises and coordinate land defense strategies if an emergency arises. The facility currently employs about 10 personnel, but that number will grow to around 50 during peacetime operations. It will function under NATO's command structure in America's Virginia, operating round the clock as part of the alliance's broader defense framework. In response, Russia appears to be fortifying its western defenses, with NATO officials pointing to satellite images confirming new construction of Russian bases and military infrastructure near the Finnish border. That perhaps appear to be in the early stages of a long-term expansion. NATO officials said that this build-up looks far smaller in scale compared to Russia's military positioning before the Russia-Ukraine war broke out in 2022. Now, Finnish defense officials believe that once the intense phase of the Russia-Ukraine war subsides, Moscow could redeploy thousands of troops to the Finnish border. Russia had already announced last month that it would strengthen its 1,300-kilometer border with Finland by erecting new fortifications and barriers, citing what it called potential unfriendly acts from Helsinki. Finland, on its part, has also begun reinforcing its eastern border. Construction of a 200-kilometer fence is underway and is expected to be completed by the end of 2026. Now, across Europe, other nations are making similar preparations. In Sweden, its citizens are stocking up on food items for a potential European war, with authorities encouraging measures to boost readiness.
In the event of a crisis or even war, it's important that every individual in our country knows that they are a key player and they need to prepare to be a key player by stocking up food, making sure they have water and other things that makes their world go around.
Now, in Estonia, authorities have started expanding fortifications along the Russian border, including fences, anti-tank barriers and underground bunkers, while Germany is reviewing its medical readiness for a large-scale conflict. Military planners are preparing systems capable of treating up to 1,000 wounded soldiers a day if a war breaks out between NATO and Russia. Poland is intensifying its defense training programs with efforts to prepare every adult male for potential mobilization. Further north, Norway, which shares nearly 200 kilometers of its border with Russia, is reopening old military bunkers and has made bomb shelters mandatory in all new building designs. Reports of unidentified drones flying over European cities such as Munich in Denmark have stirred concerns that Russia could be probing NATO's air defenses. At a recent forum in Sochi, Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that Moscow would respond significantly to Europe's militarization.
In Germany, for example, they're talking about how the German army should once again be the most powerful in Europe. Well, we're listening carefully, watching what exactly they mean. I think no one doubts that Russia's countermeasures won't be long in coming. The response to these threats, it seems, to put it mildly, will be very significant.
All right, so from Finland to Germany, preparations suggest a growing sense that NATO is getting ready across the continent for a war with Russia.
Invoke the Insurrection Act, sir.
What?
The Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you invoke?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe. And it's turning out, and we started with D.C., it's been so successful. You look at what's happened with Portland over the years, it's a burning hellhole. And then you have a judge that lost her way, that tries to pretend that, like, there's no problem. Actually, she's not even saying that. There's a huge problem in Portland. I'll tell you what the problem is. Crime. Okay, crime. There's a huge problem in Chicago. It's called crime. And we want to put out the crime, and they want to inflame the crime.
ดินถล่มหมดเลยไฟดับแน่อุ้ยนะถนนซุดเลยเนี่ยเยอะเลยเสาไฟฟ้าไฟดับแน่อุ้ย
Nguy hiểm lắm đấy. Sâu bây giờ như kiểu đất đá xuống là nó nổ xuống bầm bầm bầm.
Mira, mira. Algo está subiendo. Un tornado. ¿Y los peces se ven? Mira, 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 mira. Caramba, eso. Un tornado. Dentro al lado.